Hello, everybody. I am Sade. I do lots of different things at the moment. I run a consultancy. It's called the What If Experiment, and we help organizations experiment with different ways of being. The focus is on anti-racism, so working with teams and organizations to think about how does racism show up in policies and practices and in people, and what can we do about that to create an anti-racist future. Alongside that, I'm a mum. I've got two beautiful little children. I'm currently pregnant with my third. I do sit on the Mayor's Cultural Leadership Board, so I help set strategy for culture across London, which is like really big. You can ask me questions about that. I can tell you a bit more information. I'm a coach, so I ask lots of questions, which we'll get into. But one of the challenges I had a lot as a young person was that I was told that I asked too many questions. And now I get paid to ask as many questions as I want, which is a fun 360 moment. Um, yeah, that's my work hats. Um,
I mean, you do a lot of things. I don't know how
yeah.
you have time for all of it. And congratulations on your third on the way.
Thank
Um,
you.
okay, so yes, let's talk about your story. So you've had an incredible journey. Tell us about how it all began.
Yeah. It's so hard to say, like, where do you start with that? I guess professionally speaking, where did it begin? Is that where I should start?
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, so my career started when I was 17 and I got an apprenticeship at the Bush Theatre in West London. And that I grew up in Bush my whole life. It's important to say that I'd never seen a play before. I wasn't into theatre. I definitely didn't do drama. I came from a background, a very like working class background, where that just wasn't the kind of thing that we did in our spare time. We didn't have the money for it, but also we didn't have access to it. So it just wasn't in my sphere. But I was really set on getting skills to run my own company one day. And I saw an apprenticeship advertised, community arts business management. And I was like, oh, I could learn how to run a business. And it was life changing. Like I got the job, and it just I think the thing that I've really clocked like early on is that you get to tell your own story. And so all of my life stories had been told about me, labels had been given to me, from teachers, from parents, from other, people who had decided what my life outcomes might be. And it was only when I started working in theatre that I realized that I could take control of my own story. I could help other people tell their stories. And that just completely, um, yeah, I'd say it changed my life. At the same time of getting that apprenticeship, the same week even, I got put into a youth hostel with Centrepoint, the homeless charity. So before that, as was said, I left home when I was 14. So I left home and I left school. So I didn't have stability. So in one week, I got a job and a house.
Wow.
And it was those two things combined that helped me to then just succeed. And what was so good about that first year is because I didn't know anything about theatre. I also didn't really, it was bad to say I didn't care, but there wasn't a lot at risk for me because it was just a job and I was just curious. So it meant that I asked lots of questions. I got to I didn't know anything, so I got to soak everything in. And because I was so open to learning, I learned quite quickly. I enjoyed the work and then I excelled. Um, so after my first year, I became assistant producer and I started to produce work out in the community, but also the shows that were happening in the building. I left the Bush and went to join a bigger theatre called the Lyric Theatre in Hammersmith. And I was 18 at the time, and I became the youngest producer in the industry. So they made a job for me to create programs for young people who came from backgrounds like mine. So that was really fun. I did that for like 2 years. Um, and again, because of the life that I'd lived, I hadn't like read a strategy. It just made sense. So I went out and I spoke with young people and I was like, well, what do we need? And what came back was space, time, and money. Like if you're working class and you don't have money, then you can't afford to make theatre. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you need space, like physical space. If you're going to make a play or whatever it is you want to create, you need like a building to do that in. And time. You need people to invest in you. You need the time. So I built a strategy based on that. In our first year, we reached 800 young young adults, 18 to 25. Yeah, it was pretty intense. And I broadened it out so it wasn't just theatre because that wasn't all that I was interested in. So it was like theatre, design, festivals, writing, producing, directing, just all the things I was curious about. Basically, I was like, how can I create something for people who are into this like me? Um, and then yeah, so fast forward, I ended up leaving theatre and I went back in advertising for a bit. And what was cool about that is that I worked on the campaigns for Centrepoint. So the charity that had housed me when I was homeless, I went back to create campaigns to raise money for other young people who were homeless. So that was really rewarding. But I eventually left there and joined the Barbican Centre, which is like an art centre in Middle London, to become their head of community engagement. So at that point, I was like 22, I think, 22, 23. Um, and that was really fun. But ultimately, after a couple of years of doing that, I just realized that I was the only person sat in a lot of meetings that had my particular skills and my particular way of looking at things. So because I didn't go to uni, because I was working class, because I was mixed race, because um, I didn't, again, I just asked them little questions, like really simple questions, but it challenged a lot of people to think differently. And I realized that I wanted to run my own company that did just that. So at that point, I think I was about 24 at this point, I left and set up my own charity called Sour Lemons. When life gives you sour lemons, you make lemonade. Um, I ran that for about 6 years and then wound that down and then launched the company that I'm running now. So
Um,
that's my
um,
career in a nutshell.
wow. Okay. I mean, also
Yeah.
by job four, you were only 21 or something. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy how much
Oh,
you achieved in so early. Yeah, claps,
yeah.
absolutely.
That's one of the things I would say, like to my younger self, to younger people out there, like, you get to decide your own journey, you get to decide your own destiny. Like, I quit jobs and had nowhere else to go. And it's mad saying that, like, coming from a working class background, like, I have no inheritance. I have no, no one in my family does what I do. There was no one that was going to be like, cool, I'll pay your rent for a couple of months. But if in my bones I knew that a place wasn't right for me or it wasn't giving me what I needed in that moment, then I somehow always managed to just take a jump, a leap of faith. Um, and it worked out.
Yeah. And I think that's the confidence to be able to do that. You know, you have to build up that confidence to begin with, which
Mhm.
is hard if you have a lot of barriers up against you. I mean,
Definitely.
that's impossible, really. But if you
Yeah.
can do that, it gets easier every time, I would imagine. Slightly.
Yeah. What I would say is as you get older, there are more things that you have to think about, which is weird. But now I've got kids, right? So I can't just like quit my job and go and try something different. I mean, I could, but I've got other little people to be thinking about. But when I was 17, I was just like, meh, you know, not what's there to lose is what's there to gain. But I always had a plan. It just wasn't necessarily a like, and here's my 5 year strategy. It was, there was something, but I always had a vision for what I wanted for myself. And I've always known from the day I was born that I was destined for something bigger than what I was born with. That was always clear to me. So every time I took on a job, I was always thinking, like, how can I make this an opportunity that serves me and serves my community? Like, how can I help people who have come from backgrounds like mine? Because often I'd go into those spaces and the only difference was access.
Mm.
It wasn't like most of the people I grew up with could absolutely do those jobs, but they didn't know about those jobs. They didn't have they didn't go to those universities, etc. And so there was all of these kind of barriers that were in place that I was like, if we could just shortcut that, it would be so much more interesting.
Absolutely. And I think that is such a lesson for so many people watching that, there are definitely barriers, but don't add on to those barriers by putting your own mental barriers on top of that. If you can avoid that, easier said than
Yeah,
done, you know. Um,
yeah,
but that is a massive achievement. That's the bit that you have control over. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. But you know what? I would say for me, it was mentors. Mentors are so powerful. Like, don't ever underestimate how powerful somebody who's either been in your position or is willing to give back um, can be for you. Because for me, I had a mentor who was, I mean, she's just incredible. But I remember, like, I would go to her and just be like, Josie, I don't think I can do this, or I'm not like the other girls. I don't talk like them. Like I don't have like the things that they had. Like I felt like such a big imposter for the first 2, 3 years of my career. I was like, what am I doing here? I don't sound like these people. I don't know, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And she would be like, do you respect me? And I'm like, yeah, obviously. She's like, do you think I'm good at what I do? And I'm like, yeah, obviously. Duh. And she'd be like, well, then it's an insult to me that you would consider that you're not good enough. Like I've chosen you, I've chosen to mentor you and I've chosen to support you. So if you're sitting in front of me saying that you don't think you're good enough, what you're actually saying is that I don't know how to pick potential. And it was such a weird, like, psychological blip, but it then gave me part of the confidence that I needed to sit in space and be like, well, Jodie said I should be here.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't believe I should be there, she thought I should be there.
Absolutely. And someone else believing in you is,
Mm,
that is a confidence builder in itself. Like you say, it's a
yeah,
mindset shift. And so
absolutely.
how would you recommend that young people go out and find, like, how did you meet Jodie? And then how would you recommend that young people go out and find their own version of Jodie?
So Josie was the artistic director of the Bush Theatre. So I was really lucky. Like I became an apprentice, and then the CEO ultimately wanted to take me under her wing and support me. So that was like, you know, uh, looking back on it, a sort of once in a lifetime opportunity. And I think what I learned from that and what I ended up just in general becoming and teaching through Sour Lemons was when, so network is everything, who you know. And it's not just who you know, like, oh, I'm gonna like gather these people in my network and try and use them. It's it's thinking about like how can you be interested in people and how can you become interesting, because often like I've been to networking events where someone's talking to me but they're talking over my shoulder because they're not interested in me, they're interested that I can get them access to somebody else.
Mm.
And so one of the things that from really early, because I like questions, when I meet people, I'm genuinely fascinated about their stories, about their lives, about, I'm always like, how did you get to where you are? Like, you tell me, like, I'm interested in you. And because I showed interest, it meant that I was able to build actual relationships with people, not just transactional conversations. Um, that and then also being generous back, so like reciprocity. So I was always open to helping, I was always open to learning. I saw everything as an opportunity because why not? What's the worst that could happen? And I think that mindset, it really did enable me to build the confidence and build the networks, and the people around me believed in me. And then it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy because they thought I could do it, which made me believe I could do it. And it just got stronger and stronger. But the other thing I think that was important for me was um, when I was working at the Barbican, a piece of research came out that said young people need certain capabilities to succeed in the workforce. So it's things like resilience, um, being flexible, things like that. And I remember reading it and thinking like, yeah, but you don't like learn those things, like you live those things. Like it just felt really clear to me. And I was like, actually, I'm resilient because I've moved house like 15 times at that point. Like I'm flexible because, and I was able to kind of take those capabilities and be like, but how does my life enable me to do this? Because for the longest time, and I'm not sure the backgrounds of people on this call, but for the longest time, I felt inadequate that I hadn't been to university, and that was something that people would hold against me. And so I had to take all the things that made me feel like I wasn't good enough and turn them into superpowers. So that when I was sat in those conversations, when I was applying for jobs, when I was talking to people, I wasn't putting myself as a victim or at a deficit. I was leveling up what I had alongside what they had. It was just different.
Yeah. Massively. And I think actually in today's day and age, a lot of people that didn't go to uni, it is actually seen as a superpower because you've actually had
Mm,
more years of work behind you. You've kind of often been thrown into a working environment and you're 3 years into that, whereas people that went to uni are 3 years away from
yeah.
it in a way. And I do believe, like you say, it's about seeing the things that you've is about looking at your everyday life and then being like, what skills do I have from that that actually do translate to the workplace? And that is like you say, I mean, you I'm sure have opened up a lot of people's minds on this call, being like, wow, actually, yeah, I've also moved house a lot. I've also done this, I've got resilience in this way, this way, this way. and all the other skills
Mm,
that you would need in the workplace that are massive assets, massive assets. Do not underestimate
mm.
how assets that you gain in your non-working life do translate
Yeah.
to the workplace.
Because the thing is, like most jobs, you can learn. Like, there's not that much that, like, obviously, there's like special time. Like, I can't learn to be a doctor. Like, I've got to go to university, sure. But like, when we're talking about creative roles, right? Like, you can learn that.
Yeah.
And so, when I think back to my first apprenticeship, like when I went into the interview, they were like, "Oh, have you seen a play before? Like, what's your favorite play?" And I was kind of like, I didn't really go to the bit. But I love the cinema. I love music. I love all these other things. And they were sort of like, yeah, okay, but like you kind of need to like theatre to work here, which is a lie. You do not need to like theatre. You do not need to like film to work in those industries. It's just it's something that makes people feel good about themselves that they know a lot about those areas, but it's not true because I didn't. But what I understood was the community that they were trying to reach, and so what I said to them was, "Well, I'm a young person. Like I've lived in Shepherd's Bush my entire life. I've never heard of you. You're the what they are, like the bush they are. Like I've never heard of you. You don't do any outreach into my school. Like I've never but if you want to engage young people like me, just give me a megaphone. I'll go get them. And that was why I got the job. And so that first year I learned about theatre. I fell in love with theatre, but it was almost like a bypass to genuinely what in my head, it was like, cool, I've just got to get young people to come into theatre. So I would just like I went out into the market, I went to the shops that I knew, the schools that I knew, the bus routes, like, all the people that I knew were just like, guys, I'm going to get fired if you don't come to my new job. And people would just come and they'd just like fill the building and everyone would be like, whoa. And it's like, it's not hard. I don't know, I guess you have to just go out and talk to people. But that was such an asset that I didn't realize. Now, I understand it differently, but at the time, I didn't realize how hard that is for people who don't come from that world to do.
I think that is genuinely, hands down, one of the best examples I've ever heard of like the the manifestation of diversity, because it is diversity of voices, and ultimately every industry wants as many people as possible to flock to it and use its products or use its services, whatever it is. Theatre being a really good example. Theatre is seen so much of the time as exclusive, and part of that
Mm,
issue is because they don't have people in the industry who are from outside the industry and who have never
yeah.
seen theatre productions. Like, guys, that is a like mind-blowingly good takeaway. Everyone needs to be continuously using that example. Like, fantastic. And it just goes to show, like you say, you might not realize it, but the fact that you don't consume that product or the fact that you don't know about that company that exists is exactly why they need you. That is exactly
Yeah,
why. And you might have to relay
100%.
that to them.
Especially if you go on their website and they've got this like big fancy page that's like, we represent the community, and you're like, where? I
Yeah.
don't know you guys. Like, it's, that is such an asset. And it's interesting because years later, when I went to the Barbican, I was head of community engagement and I had to outreach into communities that I wasn't part of in East London. But I still understood how to go and speak to aunties. Like, I still knew how to go to like, women's shelters. And but again, all from my childhood. Like, no one you can't teach those things or you can't learn them in a classroom. Like there's something about life skills that's so valuable. And if you can really understand what it is that you bring, what's different about you, and how that organization isn't currently accessing that, that's your superpower over anything else.
Absolutely phenomenal. Honestly, I love that so much. I'm going to be talking about that for weeks. Um, okay, so we only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to make sure that we have time to get like your key bits of advice in for anyone watching who
Yeah.
might want to, yeah, emulate your career journey. What do you think everyone should be doing that you wish you'd done when you were younger?
I think that you should embrace failure. I think you should fail like a lot, fail a lot, because it took me, and I'm still unlearning this. I'm a perfectionist through and through, and I find it really hard to unlearn perfectionism. But if you can start earlier, understanding that every time you fail, it's an opportunity to start again. Doesn't matter what you're failing in, it is always an opportunity to start again. And if you can rewire your brain to see that as an opportunity and something that's exciting rather than something that's scary, then and also scary, being afraid and being brave are like the same thing. You can't, they come hand in hand. It doesn't mean that you're not afraid, but it will allow you to get better and better at the things that you're passionate about, and it will allow you to not take things so seriously. So for me, growing up and in my career, I'm a very fast learner. So if I understand something, I will calculate it and go, yep, I could do that. And I probably can do it. And I could do it really, really well, really fast, really well, really efficiently. But if there's something that I look at and go, I don't really think I'm going to be good at that, I won't try, or I didn't try before. And I think the not trying is, you're protecting yourself from looking like an idiot or whatever in front of people. Fine, it's embarrassing, fine. But if you only focus on the things that you're good at, you will miss out on so much more around you. And then when it comes to being in certain jobs, the opportunity to take creative risks and, financial risks and risks that you're going to have to do, like when, you're leading something, you're going to limit yourself because you'll be afraid. But if you can practice small bits of failure along the way, you'll be much more open to it.
Oh, fantastic. What a note to end on. And I do want to add to that, whenever you are afraid, and the reason you're afraid is because you're worried that people will laugh at you or whatever, honestly, even if they do, they move on, they forget. Like, the next day, they won't even
Mm,
remember that you did that thing that they thought was funny yesterday. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
It is all in your head. Um,
mm.
oh my gosh, that has been the most phenomenal talk. Thank you so much for sharing
You're
all of those
welcome.
words of wisdom and also about your story. And I just think that there is so much that the young people watching will have taken away from that in terms of motivation. We actually have a couple of people who have said, thank you so much. That was fantastic. So
No, you're welcome.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.